Two hominid fossils discovered in Kenya are challenging a long-held view of human evolution now. The new fossil evidence reveals an overlap of about 500,000 years during which Homo habilis and Homo erectus must have coexisted in the basin area, the region of East Africa where the fossils were unearthed. And if this is all true, and they believe it is, it throws evolution maybe out the door. We'll find out in a moment when we talk with Michael Cremo on Coast to Coast AM. Our guest tonight, Michael Cremo, is a member of the History of Science Society, the World Archaeological Congress, the Philosophy of Science Association, the European Association of Archaeologists, and a research associate in history and philosophy for the science of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. After receiving a scholarship to study international affairs at Washington University, George Washington University, Michael began to study ancient histories of India known as the Vedas. In this way, he has broadened his academic knowledge with spirituality from Eastern tradition. He's our guest tonight on Coast to Coast, this hour at least. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Great to be with you again with all your listeners.
This is an incredible story, finding these two hominid fossils in Kenya, truly challenging, I think, the belief of evolution. What's your take on this, Michael?
Well, it's something that I was writing about years ago when Forbidden Archaeology came out. I said when you look at all the evidence, what emerges is not a picture of evolution, but of coexistence of different kinds of hominids in the distant past. So gradually, orthodox mainstream science is coming around to that position, and that's what these latest discoveries are all about. If you go into your usual museum of anthropology, you generally see these little statues where they've got the little ape man and then a bit bigger ape man and then finally a human being. And how the progression goes technically is they believe there was a sort of a small ape man about 4 feet tall called Homo habilis that lived, they used to think, about 2 million years ago. And then after that, there was a bigger ape man, more human-like, called Homo erectus, that existed until about 400,000 or 500,000 years ago. And then they believe that finally at the end, you had human beings like us coming into existence. But these latest discoveries throw a monkey wrench into that picture, because what they found is that these two so-called human ancestors, Homo habilis and Homo erectus, were actually coexisting with each other for about 500,000 years in East Africa. And if they're coexisting with each other, that meant the later one, Homo erectus, didn't come from the earlier one, Homo habilis. So there's an additional fact, however, that they haven't mentioned in these reports, and that is that there's evidence that humans like us were coexisting with Homo erectus and Homo habilis at the same time between 1 million and 1.5 million years ago.
Does that increase the possibility, Michael, because we've all heard these stories, that we might have been genetically manipulated by another civilization somehow?
Well, that's one way to look at it. I think definitely we're not the result of some random process of evolution. I think if you look at the biological complexity of human beings, right down to the level of the DNA, it's extremely complex. And it doesn't seem that such an extremely complex system could have come about simply by chance, random mutations, and things like that. So I think, yes, there was some intelligence behind the origin of the human species and all other species as well. And I think there definitely is an extraterrestrial element to it. I think we're part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. It's not that life only exists on Earth. It exists elsewhere in the cosmos, in other locations, other dimensions of the cosmos. And yes, I think there is intelligence behind it all. I think in one sense all of us are extraterrestrials. I don't think this Earth is the real home of any of us really as conscious selves. think as conscious selves, eternal conscious selves, I think we've come from a different level of reality. And as far as our physical embodiments are concerned, as far as these vehicles are concerned that we call our bodies, yes, I think they were designed for us.
Is it possible that habilis and erectus might have been the farthest part of evolution on this planet, and all of a sudden we show up again through these other forms of intervention?
Well, I don't see it that way myself. There are some who see, and I think these new discoveries cause a problem for that theory as well, but there are some who have the theory that evolution went on from Homo habilis to Homo erectus, and then somewhere around 300,000 or 400,000 years ago, there was some alien intervention where the genes of Homo erectus were manipulated to produce the modern human species at around 300,000 or 400,000 years ago. So that's one of the theories that's out there. It's not the theory that I myself favor. I don't favor the evolution theory, the standard orthodox evolution theory that's taught in the school.
And this truly knocks that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And neither do I favor the idea that there was a relatively late genetic extraterrestrial intervention at around 300,000 or 400,000 years ago, because I think there's evidence that humans like us were present at the same time as Homo habilis and Homo erectus. One example is a discovery that was made early in the 20th century in 1914 by a German scientist named Hans Reck, who was working at Olduvai Gorge in East Africa. And he found an anatomically modern human skeleton there in Upper Bed 2 of Olduvai Gorge, which is over 1.2 million years old, which is roughly the same age as this new Homo habilis skeleton that was found, skull that was found. So it's interesting. What you have is a picture of coexistence, not just Homo habilis and Homo erectus coexisting about 1.5 million years ago, but also human beings like us also present there. So the picture is even more shook up if you include this other evidence. But even what's been announced just recently in terms of these two new skulls that were found of Homo erectus and Homo habilis coexisting in East Africa about 1.5 million years ago, that does shake things up. And I was going over some of the newspaper reports, and there was an evolution scientist named Bill Kimball who commented in one of these newspaper reports that all these changes, to human evolutionary thought, which have been brought about by these new discoveries, he says this should not be considered a weakness in the theory of evolution. They're very afraid. I mean, these scientists, they don't know what to do. These discoveries are there. They have to say something about
exactly.
them. They're worried that people are going to start losing faith in the theory of evolution. So they're saying no. But it's. I mean, he sort of says. He goes on to say further. These are the predictable results of getting more evidence. So what's the predictable result of getting more evidence? That your theory gets more and more confused and unlikely and turned upside down. I think when that happens, you got to start thinking about changing your theory.
Well, when we were in school, Michael, even grade school, we would see those movies, those cartoon-type movies of an organism that was in the water that turned into a bigger organism, that turned into a little tiny fish, that turned into a bigger fish, that turned into a fish with legs, and then it walked on shore. And that evolution of that cartoon that eventually got to us. We have all seen that. This destroys that almost entirely, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It destroys the human part of it, where you have the little ape man, getting a little bit bigger,
right,
and then finally turning into a human being. I mean, it's.
Where would you cut that off then? Where would you cut that cartoon off based on this discovery?
Well, you know, when I look at I think the whole thing is wrong.